Hey, welcome back. Today I'm going to be making a salmon and vegetable hot pot from Japan called Ishikari Nabe. So to get started, we want to make a broth, and like many Japanese broths, we are going to be using kombu or kelp. It comes in thick sheets that look like this. Don't worry about that white powder that's on the surface. Those are just flavor crystals, I guess you could call them. And I've been able to find these in my local grocery store lately in the Asian food section. You can definitely find them in a Japanese grocery store or in a Korean grocery store under the name Dashima. We're going to put one sheet in a pot along with a liter of water. We're going to bring that to a boil, and as soon as it comes to a boil, we're going to remove the kombu. I don't know why, but every recipe that I've come across for any sort of Japanese stock or broth has said the exact same thing. Remove the kombu as soon as it starts to boil, so I'm not going to question it, I'm just going to do it. With the kombu removed, we can add some seasoning ingredients to our broth. First, I have 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. 2 tablespoons of sake. Go with a clear, dry sake, nothing cloudy or sweet. And 2 tablespoons of mirin. This is a seasoned cooking sake. If you can't find this on the shelves, then go ahead and add 2 more tablespoons of regular sake, along with a tablespoon of sugar. And here I have shiro miso, or white miso. This is the miso that's used in miso soup. So if you like that flavor profile, then go with this. If you want a more robust umami flavor, then go with aka miso or red miso. And you can see why they're named that. Stir those guys in, then we can go in with our vegetables. Here I have 3 leaves of napa that I'm going to cut into 2 centimeter segments. You can cut them in half as well if they're a little bit too long. And you could totally use bok choy in this, or white cabbage for that matter, if that's what you can find. All these vegetables can be substituted with what you've got on hand. This is just the basic template of what this dish is. Next, I've got shiitake mushrooms. I'm going to cut a cross shape in the top, which is just a stylistic thing that happens in a lot of Japanese dishes. Feel free to slice it or cut it in any way that you want. These are shimeji mushrooms, also known as beach mushrooms. Here I've got sweet pea shoots. The recipe calls for chrysanthemum greens, but I could not find those in my store, so I'm opting for something with a similar texture. Looks totally different, but just a rough green. Next up, I've got some firm tofu. I'm going to use 1/3 of a block. That ends up being about 125 grams of tofu. I'm going to slice those into 1 centimeter slices. Next, I'm going to slice a leek along the bias. Be sure to do your best to get all the grit out between the layers. Leeks can be pretty dirty. Now I'm going to cover that up and cook these until they are tender, probably about 5 or 10 minutes. And once you can bite through the stem of that napa without too much resistance, I'm going to add in a sliced up salmon fillet. You can add as little or as much as you want, depending on how many servings you expect to get out of this. I'm going with about 1/2 kilo. And along with that, I'll add a knob of butter. This is about a 1 centimeter by 2 centimeter by 2 centimeter slice. And once the butter melts, the fish should be done and it's ready to serve. So going into this, I was a little surprised and intrigued by the inclusion of butter, but somehow miso and butter go really well together. The butter really ends up rounding out the nutty, savory notes of the miso with this rich creaminess. Now, since the other ingredients haven't had that much time to mingle with the broth, they don't really lend too much of their own flavor to the broth. It's more of a nice pairing between the fresh vegetables, the salmon, and the broth. So if that's something you think you'd be into, then give this a try. See you next time. Cheers.